Welcome to Property Insights, and my guest today is Rasti Vaibhav. I'll make sure I got that right. I got that right, Rasti?
Yes, you did.
Rasti uses his unique blueprint of combining strategic diversification, that's pretty important, and sharp negotiation skills from him, tailoring to his client's circumstances through his buyer advisory business called Get Rare, as in Unique Properties. Rasti, you've got an unusual background. Tell me about that background.
Thank you. So I started as an architect, turned into a data scientist, and then into a fund manager. I used all of those skills to actually build my own portfolio. And that was more of an inspiration that, if I have done it myself, I did long yards, as you can appreciate, being a first Indian, Australian as a generation here, who came only in 2006 with empty pockets. How I use this 3 hobbies, 3 passions, 3 careers to build my own portfolio. It was more my chance or my opportunity to share my knowledge with the fellow Australians who have been on the other side where I was before. It's my way of giving back, to share my secret sauce of how I have done it successfully and how anyone should really aspire and do it.
We've had a lot of people come here post-COVID in terms of immigrants, and I'll be honest with you, I'm noticing a lot more subcontinent people, a lot more Indian people,
yes,
Nepalese, Indians, Sri Lankans coming to Australia, as well as lots of other people from lots of other countries. Do you think that there's property portfolios is something where they may not be skilled themselves, but property portfolios is something that they can actually start to build their wealth in? And how hard is it to do that? It was obviously difficult for anybody, but how hard is it to do that today?
We really need to go into the details of what's really happening with the fundamentals of the property investing in Australia. As we all know, it's all about supply and demand. The good thing which is happening is there's a lot of immigrants. And if you talk about that particular segment of the world which is coming over, it's actually more about they're coming with a deep pockets. They are not really just looking for the aspiration of having a very good work-life balance, but also traditionally Asians have been investing in brick and mortar.
Why is that though? What's the fascination for people from Asia, subcontinent, about property? And by the way, my father came here from Greece. It was the same for his generation too. Southern Europeans, property.
Yes.
What's the fascination with real estate?
I think it's more about something which is tangible, which is something you can see, touch, and feel. It's something which is to be used as well. So it's not really just a pure investment like any stock company or where anything can happen, any company can crash. But here it is something tangible. It's also for use. So we know historically it's one of the safest bet when it comes to investing. But I think coming back to the Asian demography, I think because they know how to save, they are investing for their future. They save. There's a lot of hardship, as typically, I should not really generalize, but we are talking about a developing world whereby parents do whatever it can take to have a brighter future for their kids. And what it means is, working very hard, being very sincere, saving a fair bit, and now with lots of, know-how, people really want to go and invest as well, because it's not about just making your hard-earned, it's not just about earning money, but it's also making your hard-earned money work harder. So coming back to your previous question on what's really happening with those immigrants, it's like they're coming with the deep pockets. They are saying, I'm coming here with some deposit. I would actually start building wealth over here by investing. Or if nothing else, why bother paying rent when I can pay mortgage?
Yeah, they know that and they know when that makes sense too. So also they have larger incomes in terms of servicing the debt, because a lot of them still believe in the nuclear family. They have lots of contributors to the household in terms of revenues. It's not just one person, Aussie person goes out and buys a property and they've got to rely on their own income. People who come from these environments often have 3 or 4 family members who can help pay the thing off pretty quickly and then go and buy another one.
Yep.
So as a buyer's agent, what are you seeing out there in the market now? So, I guess we might just concentrate on Sydney for the moment because, Australia's a big market. But what are you seeing out there? And what would you say to somebody who wants to buy something? Let's say someone's got a deposit to buy something worth $1 million or $2 million. What are you saying to them? Is it a good time to buy, or is it? What's your experience at the moment?
No, great question. So I've always thought about, it's not just about buying our property. When you are buying a property for yourself to live in, it's a matter of, picking the right property where you like to live in And people really go with their emotions, whether it's the right match for them. So when it comes to buying our property to live in or just our property, it's very relatively easier. Of course, I mean, mind you, like there has been a lot of changes in the regulation and the debt to income ratio and whatnot we talk about when it comes to serviceability. But for someone who's doing for the first or the second time, it's relatively easy for them to go in. Now, is it the right time for them? Look, it really is about their aspiration to live in their own home, feeling that confidence that nobody will kick them out. But when it comes to thinking of your home or even your first investment to work for you, and that's where I guess it's more strategic, because buying a home is easy or buying first investment property is easy, but how can we make sure that investment is working for you so that you can build wealth out of it? Because people are not just looking for a investment, but rather a successful investment that reaps them the benefits. Now, what's really happening?
Can you give me an example of that, Rusty? Like, for example, are we talking about the rental yields? Are we talking about capital gains potential? What are we talking about here?
Now, I love that question because everyone is different. So we really need to be mindful of whether we can give that general response. It's more about where they are today, where they want to be in the future. So it's not really just about cash flow or capital growth alone per se. It's more of a combination. And let's not forget about the risk that they're taking as well, because they're putting all the eggs in one basket when they're starting. So they really need to minimize the risks as well. So for me, successful investing is all about appreciating where they want to be, as in like what their end goal is, like what sort of wealth they want to generate. Now, wealth is, of course, when you build a decent corpus where you can collect some rent or yield or, whether it's a stock dividends, that's your wealth is working for you, giving you some passive returns that you can enjoy your life. But the challenge is, how do you go and build that level? And that's where one has to be very, very strategic. Think about resources, how much they have in terms of their deposit, in terms of their borrowing capacity, in terms of the savings plan, and also appreciating the risk they're taking. Yes, they have to take risk. Property investing is not really devoid of any risk. Rather, it's one of the pure investment whereby you just can't really talk about the split of the returns as in cash flow and capital growth. We really need to be mindful of the risk as well. So successful investing is about, in my definition, minimizing the risks of downside and making sure that we are able to achieve our long-term goals of building that wealth that they can live with off the passive income.
So if I said to you, look, I'm really interested in buying around Darlinghurst, am I the sort of client that you look after? You say, okay, Mark, no worries, I'm going to go out and find you a property to buy, because I might say, look, I've got $1 million to spend and I prefer to have a unit instead of a terrace or something along those lines. I mean, how would someone approach you? And how would you look after that inquiry, for example?
Great. So this is more of an ideal client whereby they know exactly what they're looking for. And there's a buyer's brief, as in your terms, like a unit, this much budget. But if we are totally sure that this is what the client is looking for, that's perfectly fine. We'll go and do the research. We become their trusted buyer's advisor, come on their side, understand what the parameters to look for, and we do the research, of course, by talking to the sales agent, trying to get some off-market property listings out there. But we actually take one step, before we get into it, we actually challenge the person or the family that is it really what they're looking for? Only, of course, when they're open to be questioned on that. So, for example, like when somebody approaches us, we actually, when they know what they're looking for, we sometimes ask them what exactly is it that.
What would you ask me though? So let's say I came along, and let's say I'm open for you to ask me.
Yeah.
What would you ask me? What's one question you might ask me about that set of instructions?
Sure. So my question would be, what are you trying to achieve in the long run?
Well, I might say back to you, I just think Darlinghurst is a good place to invest because it's close to the city. It's close to a lot of facilities, schools, restaurants, cafes, bars, pubs, not far from the beaches if I want to get to the beach. It's close to the airport. So I think it's geographically well positioned, and therefore I think I can always get a tenant for there because they can walk. Someone might be working in town, they can walk to town, etc. So I think it's I just think it's a good area to invest in. I think Darlinghurst is, and I think Darlinghurst is the poorer cousin of Potts Point.
Yep.
And at some stage, Darlinghurst has to catch up to Potts Point. And I just think there might be some extra value sitting in Darlinghurst relative to what's going on at Potts Point. That's probably how I would answer the question. Therefore, I think it's a good capital gain upside. That would probably be my answer to you.
No, and I totally appreciate it, what you shared. But you also mentioned that you want to invest. So forget about the property. Let me understand, why would you like to invest? Like, what is the reason that you're looking for investing?
I want to make my money work for me. I don't want it sitting in the bank because I don't get a good enough return. So I want to leverage bank debt.
Beautiful.
I want to get, the capital gain might be 8% per annum. The bank's only charging me 7% per annum. So I'm going to make 2% or 1% on the bank's money.
Totally. It's a differential, as in the cost of borrowing and what the total return you're getting and profiting from the difference. Totally get it. Now, what you just mentioned about the brief, that's perfect. But at the same time, let's go deep dive into making return. Now, how much return would you like to make is, of course, it's more of a relative thing, because now what we're thinking about, as analogy, what am I hearing is, you got a car in your garage, you got fuel in the petrol in the fuel tank, you want to go for a drive because car is not really as good in the garage when you can go for a drive. Same thing, when you have some capital, some borrowing capacity, you would like to invest. But my question to you is, where would you like to end up? It's more about the end goal, because you can go for a drive. It's like going for a drive, not so much so about, I guess, the property I'm talking about. I'm talking about the long-term goal. Yes, you would like to invest and would like to make some money out of it. How much money are we talking about here?
Well, actually, I want to make money. I'm just happy to own property and happy to own it forever. I don't care whether I sell it or I don't sell it. I like it to go up in value, but I'm just trying to build a portfolio because one day, I'll pass it on to my family.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So talking about that scenario, we are talking about the term portfolio now. Now, portfolio is where we actually start thinking about like what sort of robust portfolio we are talking about. And if you're talking from an average Australian perspective, like 90% of property investors in this country, obsessed with property investing, they end up buying only 1 or 2 investment properties. But on the contrary, it's only the successful property investors who are able to build a portfolio of 5 or more properties. And the key difference, if you think about it, is more about successful investors really know their limits in terms of their risk appetite, in terms of their risk strategy, in terms of their borrowing capacity, and then investing in such a way that we can have a diversified portfolio. I mean, if somebody's saying that I would like to buy a property in Darlinghurst, I really need to know, from my point of view, if I'm open, with that kind of discussion, what all exposure do we already have, so that we can go and diversify. If the gentleman has already have few properties there or has some business already related to that economy, maybe we are better off investing elsewhere so that we can diversify the economic outlook of that market.
Yeah. Okay. So part of your discussion with the client, if they're open to it, is suggesting diversification to that particular individual, property diversification or real estate diversification. And the reason for that might be, let's invest in Queensland because maybe you don't accumulate too much wealth here for land tax purposes, or let's go invest in Adelaide because there's zero vacancy rate in Adelaide, for example, or Canberra.
Yeah.
But then you might also explain to me that, but by the way, Canberra capital gains isn't as good as Sydney. Because whilst they've got a good yield, a good rental yield, capital gains aren't that great down there. So in other words, as a buyer's agent, you can do the simple transaction, go find what's available to buy in Darlinghurst. But at the same time, you like to talk to the client openly, if they're open to it as well, about what's behind their decision making.
Exactly.
That's what you're talking about. So are you sort of moving into this sort of wealth advice? Is there any danger in that for you, like in terms of regulatory environments?
Yeah, no, so great question. So we always say that not always say, but we also practice that we are only licensed to talk about property advisory. What we are saying is that we really need to build a team of professionals, because property investing is not really just a one-man show. It's more of a team of professionals, and we really need to get that team on the board, the likes of accountants, financial planners.
Yeah, you talk to their team.
Yeah, so I can talk to their team.
Yeah.
And if they don't have, I can facilitate that team building.
Right.
So I'm not really saying that this is what you should do. I'm saying this is the team. If this is what really aspires, this is your aspiration to build wealth, legacy and whatnot. So how much it is, and then work it backwards. And let's talk to the professionals, because now we are not really talking about our property, but we are talking about multiple properties over the period of time. And let's get the right advice.
What happens? Do you ever run the risk of scaring someone off because they might not have an accountant, or they might have an accountant, but they might not have let's call it sophisticated accountant. They may not have a planner. They start to worry about cost. Yes. Right now they say, I just want to buy one property. Is it confronting for them, or how do you go about that? Because it makes sense. You've got to have a proper plan.
Yeah.
To have a plan, you've got to have those people involved. Do you run the risk of people getting a bit overwhelmed?
Look, this is the starting point of overwhelming them, that it's not really as simple as just buying our property, but rather having the right strategic team. Because what we are saying is that property investing, though maybe just for one property, it's not just a hobby, but actually your business of investing in properties. Things that we're talking about, cost of borrowing and the rate of return. And if you're talking about business, we should be thinking about a business plan, strategy, and a team to work towards it. And, yes, it's overwhelming in terms of the cost, but that goes with it's all about the importance of a strategy and the planning and the right advice upfront, because the cost of ignorance eventually becomes too high, as we all know. The stamp duty, if there's a transition between, father, as you said, as a requirement to pass it on towards the kids, there's a transaction as a stamp duty or transaction cost again. So bringing it all that up front in a discussion on paper without really moving, it's like a GPS. We are not really saying just take one left turn, it's easy, but rather mapping it out, the whole thing. Yes, it's overwhelming, because now we are talking about, okay, what's going to happen in 20, 25 years down the line. It goes back to the statement, if you give me 6 hours to cut the tree, or rather use 4 hours to sharpen my axe first. So it's more about planning upfront and then moving forward. Because it's if I get the right foundation, building the tower is very easy, as in tower of wealth. It's very easy, one floor after the other. And
Rasti, the book here, the Property Wealth Blueprint, how to build a robust portfolio to generate passive income and live the life you desire. When did you put this book together?
Look, this actually came as my personal notes of investing since last 12 years. I've been investing in this country.
Yep.
Being MBA and CFA, I was very much into the education side of things before doing anything. I almost spent about 14 months just to research how property investing works in this country. So I was doing all of that. And when I started this business to give and share my knowledge, I was sending them individual articles, what I've written or collated over the period of time. And I realized it's much easier for me to put that together as a book. It took me about 8 months to put it together. And only when I had a deadline, that only was actually able to make it. But the whole, I've learned from lots of mentors, a lot of coaches, attended lots of workshops. So it's more of a summary. And I really want to keep it very short and succinct so that it's easy to read and digest.
Rasti, I think that I love the property environment as an investment asset class. I really do. And I think it's just worked for us for a long, long time, in Australia in particular. I think that there is a lot of demand for property. That's one of the reasons that property's carried us through all sorts of recessions in Australia over many years. And I do really think it's important for people to get proper independent advice about what they're going to buy and why they want to buy it, and what's the objective, what's it all part of, as opposed to just buying some random asset that may or not own in 2 or 3 years' time. I don't like speculation at all in the property market.
Yep.
It is an investor's market where you got to invest properly. So I think that your business, it's a rare thing to get people to think strategically about real estate investment. So Rasti, thanks very much for coming on. I really appreciate that.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.